So let's talk about sustainable pricing. That was another thing that you brought up on our discussion. So describe that for us. What do you refer to as sustainable pricing in your business?
So it's going to vary from photographer to photographer. Some people work on location, some work in a studio. What I like to start with when I'm mentoring a student is we always start with running their cost of doing business.
Okay.
Any business needs to know what it costs them to run their business.
Right.
Like, you have to know these numbers. They need to be accurate. They need to be a good reflection of what your goals are for your business. So like, I started with a home studio. I changed my pricing to the luxury pricing while I still was in the home studio, and did about a year of really great sales in a home studio. I remember the discussion with my husband where it was like, I'm ready to move into the studio. I'm making enough. I can definitely do this. I have the money saved. And he's like, well, why would we do that when you're making great money in a home studio? Well, I did it because I can provide a better experience if I don't have my dog and my cat and my 3 kids running around. And it was really stressful. So moving into the studio space, I didn't even have to change my pricing because I was already priced based on my goals by doing my cost of doing business.
Okay.
I did eventually raise them, obviously. Like, we're going to be making changes to our pricing. It's always organic.
Yep.
But it's possible to be in a home studio or to be on location and charging that luxury price because you're giving them an amazing experience.
Right.
And that will allow you to achieve those goals quicker. So by running our cost of doing business, making sure that we're paying ourselves a fair wage, which I think as creatives is really
that can
important.
Be really tough.
Yeah. We can be we have a lot of money blocks. So it really helps, I think, to have a mentor, someone who's going to kind of push you, to challenge you on those, and to make sure that you're not making business decisions based on emotion, that they really need to be reflective of your numbers and what your goals are.
Yeah. Did everybody hear that? A little bit louder for the people in the back.
People in the back.
Do not make decisions based on emotion.
Yeah.
It has to be data driven. I am very lucky here at White House to be surrounded by very, very, very intelligent people, and decisions are made here based on fact and data and research, instead of, I think we should do this. And I can't count the number of times that I'll be talking to photographers around the country, and I'll ask about what their most popular products are, and they'll say, well, these 3 things, and they have 12 on their price, their product guide. Like, what about these?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't sold one of those in 5 years. Well, what in the heck?
Why
are they
is it still there?
On there?
Right?
Let's move on. Oh, but I really like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we get emotionally attached to things,
Yes.
but you really have to look at your market. And there's been times where the market has told me, based on what I was selling, it's okay to raise your prices. If everyone buys your top collection, then it's too low.
Yeah.
I will say that when I first raised my pricing to the luxury level, it was really scary.
Yeah.
And if you are not priced at a point where it's scary, where you want to throw up in your mouth a little bit every time you say your pricing out loud, then you're probably too low for the luxury market. I got a lot of feedback when I was making that change that wasn't positive. My dad, who's a successful businessman, he's retired now, but I called and told him, and he said, Lindsay, no one's going to pay that much for just pictures, which was really hard to hear. But he didn't value photography.
Right.
At a high level. Why would he? His wife was a photographer and she would do it for free. So he never had to pay for it. But when I had those first sales, I would call him every time, just crying. I was so excited that I could turn this passion of mine into a successful business. I eventually, once I'd hit my top sale, I stopped calling because I didn't want to be boastful, but he called and was like, is everything okay with your business? Just checking in. I was like, I didn't want to keep rubbing it in. But it was so exciting because he, over time, was like, oh yeah, I think you need to raise your prices again. He fully got on board when he could understand that there is a market for photography in the luxury side.
Right, that's awesome. So another piece of that too, and as you're watching along today in the conversation that we're having, you are there. You have achieved a level that you are happy with. There's always room to grow, but you have a lot of success. You've got history. When you're starting to change over pricing to luxury, all the things like that, one of the most difficult things can be closing the sale. That I've talked to people about, and having that stamina, that being solid enough to say, okay, this is your invoice total is 11,000, whatever today,
Right.
and being able to say that without throwing up,
Yeah.
in your mouth. I'm sure there were times where you had butterflies like crazy when you're giving that final total. Like, what is your advice to people watching along today, that have to go through that for the first time and are scared to death to do it?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is the luxury client pricing is not the most important thing to them.
Okay.
It might be to us, and we don't want to put our emotion onto our clients. Our clients are not us.
How do you do that? I'm
Okay,
gonna interrupt you right now because we don't want to forget that.
Right. So I'll explain that here in a second. I just
Okay.
want to make a couple points. So
Okay.
the most important thing, I think, is having your pricing set up so it's strategic, so that your products sell themselves. Like, I'm not a salesy person at all. I'm a helper. I am there to help my client make sure that they get everything that they could possibly need and want. And sometimes that means, as I'm going through and saying, okay, well, what about gifts for grandparents? And Walmart in these different locations, and picking out all the images and things that they love. And I'm sitting there looking as I'm totaling up their pricing, because we don't talk about pricing during the sales session unless they ask. Because again, it's not the most important thing to the luxury client. They just want what they want. And if that total is getting high, I have a threshold where even at this point, I'm like, if I get over 15 grand, I'm a little like, oh, what's happening?
Right.
What are you doing, sir? And I even had a client once where I totaled his total. It was just over 15,000, and I gave him his total, and he said, Lindsay, I'm not done. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Never mind.
That was where I forgot. I stopped being helpful. So if I'm just being helpful and making sure that they're getting everything that they want, and keep that focus as a helper, I'm not focused on the price either. Then when I do turn my clipboard around and show them, okay, this is what you're getting. I go through, I don't even talk about the price. It's there, they can see it, but we're not talking about the price because it's not what matters. I'm giving them everything that they want. Once I say, okay, these are all the things we're getting, here's your total. I don't even say it out loud, I just point to it because I don't want to say it out loud. Mm-hmm. It's a game of chicken. Whoever talks first loses. So I do not want to be the first person to talk.
Right.
And one of probably three things happens at a sales session at that point. They say, great, cash, credit, or card. Like, hand me over their platinum card. I'm like, awesome. And we're just so happy. They're thrilled. They're not making this purchase and regretting it. They're so happy with what they got. Another thing that might happen is there's a long pause. And that's really hard to not vomit out a discount. Right. Oh, but I can give you a better deal than that. Exactly. Like, you don't know what they're thinking. It could just be that they're literally like looking through and making sure my math is correct, because my math is not always correct. I'm an artist. I have skills, and math is not one of them. So I just wait and let them take it in. Sometimes if it's a couple, they're like looking at each other, and I'll ask, do you guys need a minute? And I'll step out if I need to. I take my phone with me and like doom scroll Facebook, so I'm not overthinking like what's going to happen. When I come back, usually they're like, okay, great. They just needed to check in and make sure this is a big purchase. We want to make sure we're on the same page. I'm not going to go home and get yelled at.
Yes.
Sometimes I'll say, that is more than we'd planned on spending. We're not sure that we can cover that. And then I'm just helper mode again. Okay, great. What are our priorities? What do we need to scale back on? We might start taking some things out. Honestly, oftentimes we'll start kind of trying to narrow things down a little bit, and they'll be like, you know what, never mind. Let's just do it.
Right.
So that's probably the majority of the time is the first, where they just pause for a moment and then they hand me their credit card.
Fantastic. And also, I want people following along here to understand, like, you're prepared for all three of those scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're fine with saying, do you need a minute?
Yeah.
And having the confidence to leave the room and let them have that conversation, not pressure, but that can be hard if you've never done that before and you're in that awkward moment, because that is the first thing that comes out. Well, I can do this for you.
Yeah. The other thing that sometimes happens, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, is I have a lot of clients who will ask for a discount. And sometimes it's cultural. It's just that's something that they were brought up to do. They will always, always ask for a discount. It doesn't offend me. It's totally fine. So I usually will, this is where being the business owner, like I get to do whatever I want. I know what my cost of doing business is and what I need to be averaging. I know if this is a great client, they're going to be giving me lots of referrals. I want to take good care of them. I don't do discounts though. I add value. So one of my favorite things to do is say, you are so close to reaching the $7,000 mark. Once you spend that amount, I'll give you a $500 artwork credit that you can use towards anything. So it's an incentive for them to maybe spend a little bit more. An artwork credit does not cost me $500.
Right.
And they can use it for anything, including digital images. But they feel good, like, I got a good deal. That's my favorite thing, is a client spending $8,000 and saying, that was a good deal.
And give you a hug on the way out.
Absolutely, they always do, every time.
Yeah.
And my other favorite thing is when I'm talking about pricing with them, they'll say, that sounds reasonable. And if they knew how triggering for photographers it was to hear the word reasonable, because we hear that in a lot of groups, like looking for a reasonable photographer, it's totally reasonable to them. The experience, the images that they feel very connected with, and the beautiful finished artwork is all reasonable to them for them to be spending them on.